Welcome to the Epic Company Culture Podcast, where your host, Josh Sweeney, will give you, the business leaders, HR professionals, and company culture aficionados, the knowledge you need to take your company culture to the next level.
Hello, my name is Josh Sweeney, and welcome to the Epic Company Culture Podcast. Before I get started, I would like to thank Prototype Prime for this amazing podcasting room. Our topic for today is part of the team, but not really. So what we're going to talk about is in relation to 1099 employees, remote employees, contractors, part-time people, and how a lot of organizations have them as part of the team, but not really. So let me start off with some examples that'll convey this message. I'm going to start off with contractors. So I have a friend that works as a contractor at a Fortune 500 company. And the odd thing is this company, I'm hearing through the grapevine and hearing from my friend that this company treats contractors a little bit differently. And what they've done is right now, all of those contractors are in a different area of the rest of the employees. So they actually have this contract area where they know that's where all their contractors are. So they're kind of segmented off from the rest of the group in a weird way. Of course, they go back and work with the teams that they need to, but they're off in contractor land. And this may or may not necessarily be a bad thing in this organization. There may be some strategic reasons why they need to do this. But what I found in the part of this that we're sharing is what I've seen is a lot of companies treat remote employees, contractors, 1099s, and anybody that's not in the headquarters as a W-2 as they treat them differently. They treat them as, for lack of a better term, a second-class citizen, right, in the organization. And I find this really odd because, from a contractor perspective, I know they're going through contracting firms, and the larger the organization, the more levels that they're going through and the more people that are making margin off of that contractor. And so oftentimes these are the most expensive resources, right? You have a contractor that's, the contracting firm that they're being contracted from, that organization's paying them, let's say $200 an hour for that person. The contract may be a year. Well, at a year, that's a $400,000 employee. And what we're finding is they're treating that that rate, right, $400,000 person fundamentally differently in a worse way than they do a full-time employee that makes $80,000 a year. So what we're seeing is a lack of access. So they don't have access to the same facilities or events or other team strategies. They're not integrated in. They don't have the same authority. So we're seeing how they're they're just treated differently. And sometimes this is more overt and sometimes not. So with that, we want you to think about how you're treating these contractors. Are they part of the team or are there these weird undertones? And I've been a contractor for some large organizations and some of them are better than others. But over time, you do start to get some very odd undertones and situations that you run into where you're not privy as a contractor. So some interesting things come up there. The same thing with remote employees tends to happen. So depending on the size of the company and the budgets and other things that happen, there's different reasons why remote employees get treated differently. Some of the examples that we see are holiday parties. So depending on the size of the company and the remote employees and how that's structured, the organization is announcing a holiday party and they're announcing it to everybody and everybody knows that it's happening. Even if they're not announcing it, word gets passed along that they, after the fact that there was this amazing company holiday party. Oh, but by the way, the remote employee wasn't flown in for this, right? So they were not really a part of the team, right? So that it creates a little bit of a rift. It's easier for a remote employee to leave when they're not part of the team. They are, but not really. So that's one way I've seen it where, you're not flying people out for a holiday party at headquarters. Another way that I've seen is like team meetings. And these are just the small undertones of things that build up into bigger issues and around not treating them the same. So team meetings, maybe at headquarters, every time the weekly team meeting happens or the monthly team meeting, food's brought in, or everybody goes out and the company's paying for a lunch and it's catered, or they go to a location where they're paying for it, whatever it might be. But that team at headquarters is then going off and building up that camaraderie and enjoying lunch together, and the remote employee is left out. They're sitting on the meeting, they listen to the meeting, they're on the video, whatever it might be, and then they're really just left in the wind. Everybody else is going out without them, and they see that that's happening. For all of these, it's not really the issue that this happens once or twice. It's really the theme that happens over time that gives people a feeling that they are different, that they are separate from the team, and that they're treated separately. And that's when you start to get into retention challenges and other challenges in motivating those remote employees or contractors or part-time people. So what are some of the solutions to this? Well, obviously integration with the team. If it's a holiday party, you should fly people in. If it's, maybe it's regional. Maybe you're on the West Coast, the headquarters on the West Coast, and you have a bunch of people on the East Coast. Maybe you need to coordinate a smaller party on the East Coast. Bring at least those people on the East Coast all together and show that there is value, and maybe it's that cost-effective third option or additional option to bringing them all the way in and flying everybody in for something. So integrate them with the team, make them feel a part of it, at least locally or regionally or however you can. The other thing is obviously the solution is to just treat them like a full-time employee. Ensure that at every step they're treated exactly the same. Now, this is hard to do. I don't get the feeling from the situations I was in or the environments I was in that it was intentional. It just happens. And those are things where, as a contractor, you can keep a mental tally of it, maybe purposely or not, but as they build up, you know that they're happening. So, be intentional about treating them like a full-time employee. And lastly, you just really have to go the extra mile. If you're choosing to have contract employees, if you're choosing to have remote employees or part-time employees, whatever it might be, you have to intentionally put time into minimizing the feeling that they have around being separated. Because at the end of the day, you're trying to build a corporate culture. You're trying to be inclusive. You want to make sure that that person you're hiring or that resource that you have wants to be around and that they're going to be retained. So you may have to take additional steps in order to ensure that they feel included. So, in closing, what I'm going to challenge you to do is think through your contractors, your remote employees, your part-time people, and just make sure that you are keeping them inclusive to the team, and think of ways that you can go above and beyond to make them feel welcome.
Thank you for tuning in to today's episode of the Epic Company Culture Podcast with Josh Sweeney. If you enjoyed this content, please subscribe on iTunes, SoundCloud, or Stitcher. For additional content and transcripts, visit epicculture.co. If you have questions or topics you would like us to address or expand on, tweet us at epicculture1 or email at podcast@epicculture.co.